It is October 27th, 2021. We have 10 games on today's NBA slate. Just wanted to give you guys my 2 cents on these and hopefully get 2 cents back from you guys and see what your guys' opinions are on these games and if you're betting on them, if you're not betting on them, which ones you like, which ones you don't like. First game on the slate is Hornets at Magic. Line opened up at -6 on this one. Really big on this Hornets team. I really like the young pieces that they have, and they're playing really well. Miles Bridges is one of the betting favorites for most improved player of the year. LaMelo's playing great. Everybody's playing really good basketball on that team, and they're on a hot streak. They're coming off of a really bad beat to the Celtics. They led by like 10 points in that fourth quarter, and for some reason, coach didn't put Oubre and LaMelo back into the game until like 5 minutes left in that fourth quarter, and after they had a bit of a point swing. LaMelo only played, I think it was like 32 minutes and some change in an overtime game as that team's best player. I think that they should have won that game. I do think that, but the Celtics, that's not a knock on the Celtics. They played really well. Tatum's starting to really heat up. But the Magic, it almost seems like the book's giving the Magic a little bit too much credit for that win over the Knicks the other day. They were a big underdog in that game. I think they were like 12-point underdogs or something like that, and they ended up winning that game. Line here, opened -6. I'm seeing it -5, -5.5 even on a lot of books, and I don't trust this Magic team. They have an average point differential this year so far of -15.5. If you take out that Knicks game, it's -22 and some change. They're not really keeping a lot of these games close. I know it's only been a couple of games in the season, but I'll gladly take this Hornets team. Although I could see it being a letdown spot for them. It almost seems like, even though we're only a few games in the season, they're almost getting a little complacent defensively. They play some really lazy defense. LaMelo specifically plays some really lazy defense. If you watch the games, you probably see what I'm talking about there. But next game on the slate, we have Wizards at Celtics. We just touched on this a little bit. The Celtics, they kind of struggled a little bit to open the season. Shooting wise, Tatum struggled for sure, but he's caught some rhythm here. Last two games, I think he's had like 30 and then a 40-point game. He's definitely playing a lot better. And again, I think the book's giving the Wizards a little bit too much credit for them beating the Pacers, but in that game, that Pacers game, they shot 50% from the three-point line, and that's obviously not something that's sustainable. I'm not going to count on Kyle Kuzma and Spencer Dinwiddie giving me 30 points each every night. And the Brooklyn line, when the Wizards played Brooklyn, Brooklyn opened up -8.5, and there was so much money on the Wizards there. The line moved to -5.5. I took Brooklyn -8.5, doubled down at 5.5, and they won that game pretty candidly. I didn't have to sweat that one out too much. But, the Wizards, they're not an awful team, I suppose. They're not as bad as like OKC, but a lot of that team's key pieces are just the scrap that the Los Angeles Lakers didn't want anymore. They have KCP, Montrez, Kyle Kuzma. They have a lot of pieces in their core, especially with Rui and Brian out, that are just pieces that the Lakers didn't want anymore, that they didn't think was going to bring them to ultimately where they're trying to get, which is to hoist that Larry O'Brien trophy at the end of the season. I think the Celtics will grab their first home win of this season in this one, and I'll lay those 4 points with the Celtics. Next game that we have on the slate is the Heat at the Nets. This is going to be a really, really close game. I don't know if I want to bet on this game just because of how close it probably will end up being, but I definitely want to watch this game. Jimmy's coming off of a really good performance even though it was against the Magic. But he played great in that game. A lot of these Nets pieces have really underwhelmed to start the season. In particular, James Harden, he hasn't played spectacular basketball, but KD's been playing MVP level basketball, which isn't surprising from him. But the Nets are a really, really good home team. This one's going to be in Barclays, and I think I'm going to roll with the Nets if I had to pick a team here. Neither of these teams are incredibly deep. Outside of Patty Mills and LaMarcus Aldridge giving you some points on some nights, and Tyler Hero and Keefe, you don't have a lot of guys on these rosters that make them really deep. And Kyle Lowry's been struggling so far. He hasn't shot the ball really well. I don't think he's had over 14 or 15 points, and I think he's only had one game that was in double digits. I might be wrong, but anyway, he hasn't played amazingly, at least on the offensive side of the ball. And I think the Nets might start to catch a rhythm here and might start gluing and meshing a little bit. So I'll take the Nets in this matchup. Pacers at Raptors. Line opened Raptors -1, and it looks like it is -1 Raptors now. Now I did see a little bit of movement this morning and into late last night where the Raptors ended up being on dogs, and Pacers ended up being like +1, +2, which is where I took them. But it's a pretty big point swing in just a few hours after the line opened, and now we're kind of back to where it started. But the Raptors have continued to show me that they're better than I expected them to be without Siakam. Defensively, they're a really good defensive team in my opinion, but they lack a little bit offensively, especially with Siakam off the floor. And Pacers are a pretty solid roster. I think LeVert is questionable for this one, so we might end up actually coming back and playing, which just makes them a little bit deeper. The rookie Duarte, I've been becoming a pretty big fan of Duarte. He's really been playing really, really well, hitting all of the shots, and he's playing good basketball. And the Pacers are weird in the fact that they're actually significantly better as a road team than they are as a home team. At home, they're 13 of 23 last year, and on the road, they're 21 and 15. So, with Pacers on the road here, and LeVert possibly coming back, I'm going to roll with the Pacers on this one. The next matchup we have is Hawks at Pelicans. Line opening up -6 Hawks, seeing it -5, -5.5 on a lot of books now. This Pelicans team without Zion has not looked good for the most part. They beat the Timberwolves last game by a pretty good margin, but I don't know if you watched that game or had the opportunity to, but that was an ugly, ugly, ugly game played by the Timberwolves. In my opinion, it didn't look good at all. Outside of that, the last game that they played against the Pelicans, they're losing games on an average of 14.33 points a game. And the Hawks weren't an awesome road team last year, and this one's going to be in New Orleans, but the Pelicans fan base isn't necessarily a threat there. There's not a lot of them out there. It's kind of a rarity. I'll take the Hawks -5 in that one. Next up we have T-Wolves at the Bucks. Line opening -7.5. It looks like it's adjusted to -6.5 Bucks. On this one, Drew Holiday out, Lopez out for this game. Bobby Portis and Ojale look like they're going to be probable to make their season debut in this one. This is a tough game to put a bet on. There's a lot of variables on this in this game as far as injuries go, and the Timberwolves are such an inconsistent team. Sometimes they look like a team that could be in the playoff hunt, at least for like a 7th or an 8th seed or something like that. And then other nights they just look terrible. which is strange. I mean, you'd hope to think that they have some improvement from last season, which was, pretty much the same thing. They have a really good team on paper, but it didn't seem like they were able to, capitalize on the pieces that they had on the floor last year. One of their biggest problems was just defensively. I'm pretty sure they ranked, it was either last defensively last year or near last. It might have been, I think it was last. I think it was either the Kings or the Blazers or the Timberwolves that were last. But not a good defensive team. Seems like it's, that really hasn't changed. So I think I'll probably stay out of this one. If I had a pick and I could have a consistent T-Wolves team, I would pick them plus 6.5. But it's just, you never know what you're going to get out of that team, and you never know if Giannis is going to do Giannis things. I mean, he could very well have 40, 10, and 10 and win the game by himself because he just does shit like that. Lakers at Thunder, there's a lot of line movement on this one. The line opened up at minus 9.5. I'm seeing it minus 4.5 on some books now, which is justifiable. The Thunder had a okay game against the Warriors. They led for a good portion of that game and ended up giving up the lead towards the end. At first glance on this, I didn't want to come anywhere close to this game, laying 10 points with the Lakers, who just have looked so shaky. They've had a bunch of chemistry issues, and we've talked about that. I think AD and LeBron are day-to-day in this one. I don't know if they've been confirmed or not confirmed to play, but, they don't call Anthony Davis street clothes for nothing, you know what I mean? Now that the line's down to minus 4, I'm really tempted to take that trap and lay some money on the Lakers minus 4, but minus 9.5, there was no chance. Kings at Suns. I'll be honest with you guys. I'm very, 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 very rarely going to fade the Suns here. I mean, if I wasn't such a big Suns fan, I'd be really tempted to take this Kings team plus 8. I do think the Suns win this game. But it's a lot of points to lay, and this Kings team has been keeping games pretty close against some good teams this year. They've kept the Jazz pretty close, and in fact they led against the Jazz for most of that game until the end of that game where the Jazz kind of pulled ahead. But I guess that's always what happens. They always say the better team usually differentiates themselves in that fourth quarter, and that's what happened. But yeah, if I was going to bet on this one, I'd probably look at Kings plus 8, but the line hasn't moved a bit. I thought it would. I thought a lot of people would take the Kings plus 8, and I'd be able to grab the Suns like minus 6 or something like that. But I'll probably stay out of that one. Grizzlies at Blazers. Line opened up minus 2 Blazers. Dame is struggled pretty heavily to start this season through his first few games. He shot, I believe it was 8% from 3-point land. In total, he's shooting 15 of 50 through the first 3 games. The story remains the same with the Blazers defensively anyway. They ranked near the bottom of the league last year, and they don't really look much better this year defensively. They got blown out by the Clippers last game, pretty much from the jump. It wasn't really even close, but Dame could very well be due for a big game, or I could see that happening. But I really like this Grizzlies team, and again, the Grizzlies, just like the Pacers, had a better record on the road than they did at home last year. 21-15 on the road. Grizzlies look really good to start this season. They're possibly a free throw away from being 3-0. Ja missed that free throw at the end of that Lakers game that would have tied them up, and I got to roll with the Grizzlies on this one plus 2. I think I've also sprinkled a little money on Grizzlies money line and Grizzlies minus 2.5 at some plus money. I really, really like the Grizzlies in this matchup. That's the game that I'm going to be betting on most heavily. I think they match up really, really well against the Blazers. Last game on the slate is Cavs at Clippers. Line opened up at minus 7.5 Clippers. depending on the book you had, you might have seen -8. I'm still seeing -8, -7.5 for the Clippers on most books right now. Serge likely is going to remain out in this one. Cleveland's looked really good to start the season, and they had a really good offseason, and they added a lot of good pieces to what they were already building there with Sexland. Lauri Markkanen, Evan Mobley, Kevin Love, and Jared Allen are arguably, the best front court in the league if you take all four guys, your starters and your bench front court. I mean, they have a really, really good front court. They're deep at that front court position, power forward and center, and I like that team a lot. I picked them to cover against the Nuggets, and they won that game. I like that team a lot, but then again, this Clippers team isn't a joke. It's just a lot of points to lay with them. I think the Clips probably end up winning this game, but it's just a lot of points to lay, and I think the Cavs can keep this one close, and I'll take them plus the points on this one.